The latest Red Sonja movie welcomes us back to the Hyborian Age in the quietest way possible. This film had its share of production issues, with major changes in creative direction, writers, and casting. Distribution issues followed, leading to a very limited August release window. Surprisingly, it happened to pop up in theaters this last weekend where I'm at, albeit with very few showtimes, but as a longtime sword and sorcery fan and B movie aficionado, I had to check it out. Does this bring the she devil with a sword to life in a way she deserves? At least we got a woman with red hair.
And these.
And that protects.
Nothing. The crowd will love it.
This is clearly a B movie. It looks cheap, it feels cheap, the acting is mostly subpar, the CGI ranges from decent to dreadful, and the storyline feels very recycled. Now, I'm not going to pretend I wasn't expecting this going into it, but this one is sadly missing a lot of that charm and character that makes some of the older movies in that category so much fun to watch. They may be cheap, but they make up for it in other ways. There isn't really any campy fun. There's some blood, but it's very limited. There's a little spiciness in the film, I guess, but it's nothing like we got back in the heyday of this genre. And when it is displayed, there's this awkward feeling to it. Like, we're giving a nod to the source material, but that's enough of that. Get away, you, with that pesky male gaze. So this bears little resemblance to the bulk of 80s barbarian B movies, including its own source material. This leans closer to an Uwe Boll production, with all the scene chewing, poor effects, hokey action, and sanitized violence that contains. Yes, the chainmail bikini is there, but it's presented as a joke rather than a choice that Sonya makes because she's a barbarian and a badass. It's not something her character has agency over, but rather a humiliation meant to degrade her during her gladiatorial matches. She does get an armor upgrade, which looks kinda cool, but let's be honest, no one has a problem with Conan running around in his signature outfit, so why is this twisted around here? Though, to be fair, it isn't present in the 1985 movie. But anyone who read the old Marvel or the newer Dynamite comics even isn't going to get the type of character they know from there, unfortunately. This seems to be an intentional choice. It was written by Tasha Huo, who wrote other such gems as The Witcher Blood Origin, a god-awful spin-off determined to hit every DEI target out there, and the poorly received Tomb Raider, The Legend of Lara Croft animated series. It was directed by MJ Bassett, who did direct another Robert E. Howard creation, Solomon Kane, which I really like, but who made it clear that this movie would steer clear of sexual politics. Now, normally I'd say that sounds just fine, but here it's had the effect of distancing Sonya from some of the core parts of her character. In this movie, she's an eco-warrior for the most part, seeking to topple an evil empire that's threatening to tear down her beloved forest, where she sought refuge after her tribe was violently dispersed, leaving most of them dead. Sonya is a Hyrcanian, though she thinks the rest of her people are dead, and she's seemingly spent her adolescence and early adulthood entirely in the forest, where she finds comfort with a tree carved in the shape of her goddess. Now, I haven't read all the newer Dynamite comics, so I may have missed something, but this doesn't seem like the Sonya I know. The wandering mercenary, very much a female version of Conan, occasionally championing people in need, but largely fighting for coin and food, living by her own rules. Now that I've seen the movie, I'd say that's because this takes place before her wanderlust days. In this universe, anyway. This Sonya is naive, sheltered, unfamiliar with civilization and people, and lacks a lot of that bluster and bravado you might think of when it comes to her character. She gains more of that toward the end of the movie. The initial catalyst remains largely the same as the comic versions and the 1985 movie, as well as Conan and umpteen other 80s sword and sorcery movies. The Massacre of Her Village. Though notably, there is no goddess empowering her with her martial skills, along with the vow that she will never lay with a man unless he defeats her in combat. This movie shakes it up with a male prince, who has a similar ethos, that if Sonya can scratch him, then he'll be her prize, since his nickname is the Untouched. I'm not sure if he ever told any of the guys that. Sonya's fighting skills are her own, though there is an event later related to rebirth and destiny that ramps things up, and makes her more of the she-devil with a sword that you might expect. It is a departure from what's being told before, though, for better or worse. Personally, I think it's for the worse. Those origins, well, they aren't that much better, but they do instill some core aspects of her character and influence her motivations, lending themselves to psychological manifestations of her behavior, understandably. This movie makes the mistake of not showing an evolution to Sonja and her survival or fighting abilities. So when the chips are down and she has this incredible ability with no explanation, you run into the same problem a lot of modern girl boss movies have, despite this being a much older girl boss character. And anyone watching probably came for exactly that. There is an explanation for her abilities later, but they're also imparted later, and it's wrapped up in destiny, so it doesn't feel satisfying. It's no Conan on the Wheel of Pain. That was badass. There's this odd dissonance between the visuals and the scope of what's actually occurring on screen. It's like the creatives felt that they needed to punch things up to such overblown levels in the CG department. The visual tone clashes horribly with the more personal story and struggles that Sonia is faced with. It also has that soft, washed out look common in productions that rely heavily on CG backgrounds. There's a huge arena falling off to a cliff on one side, surrounded by towering colossi and rocky spires around the rest of it, which is elevated to impossible heights amid a jagged and expansive city that looks like it belongs in a, I don't know, sort of magic punk gothic setting, if that's even a thing. The whole city is powered by a gyroscopic arc reactor while primitive mechanical tanks rumble past. This is all supposedly the result of the Emperor Dragon. Yep, that's his name, gaining the knowledge of ancient magical science or something from one half of a sacred book. He's convinced Sonia can help him find the second half of the book, which is hidden somewhere in the mysterious forest where she lives. The Emperor is a weak sauce character, who you'd think is a sorcerer in the Hyborian tradition, but he's just a little man with a big brain who's been corrupted by his lust for power and vengeance. I would have bought into this character more if he were some kind of emaciated sorcerer corrupted by the dark powers, but he comes off as a complete pussy, not intimidating in the least. It's all magic science based, apparently. There's zero menace, zero aura. I don't know why anyone would follow his orders. At his side is Anicia, a gladiator champion who Dragon's manipulating by dosing her with some potion that makes her hear voices. This comes up again in the climax in a big way, but the whole thing, including their relationship, feels undercooked and unconvincing. The movie feels like a take on Princess Mononoke or Fern Gully or something. Nature versus technology or industrialization. You've seen it before, even in The Lord of the Rings in the form of the Ents destroying Isengard. Now see it here, just done worse. Sonia and the Hyrcanians represent the nature side of things, and Emperor Dragon and his army represent the technology side. That's probably why he wasn't written as a sorcerer, because the writer likely thought they were driving home some sort of a point. The story consists of Sonia tracking down some hunters who killed some of the worst CG animals put to screen, because they'd taken their horns and left them to die. Damn poachers. This leads to her capture and enslavement in the gladiator pits for Emperor Dragon's amusement. The surrounding characters, the other gladiators, are just terrible. The acting is awful, the dialogue is cringy, the attempts at camaraderie are laughable. Rona Mitra, who I normally like, is so bad in this. I don't know what the hell happened. Though I will say that Matilda Lutz does a decent job. I can't fault her too much, as she is by far the standout actor and character in this whole thing. She really tries, and mostly pulls it off, though she's the most diminutive Sonya I think I've ever seen, and looks smaller than the other women around her. She's a far cry from this. I call this kind of thing out in other movies, and as much as I like this character, I have to do it here too, to be fair. Physically, she's too small. But acting wise, I thought she did a decent job. Anyway, you probably know where this is going, the broad strokes anyway. There's a gladiator rebellion, the Emperor pursues his mad quest for dominance, and Sonya leads the charge against him, culminating in a big battle. It's very much in the vein of these sorts of films. Sonya takes on more of an ass kicking persona toward the end, because destiny, and she looks much more convincing than before. I quite like that part. Sadly, though, she's robbed of what could have been a big hero moment, and we're given a twist that just feels lame and unsatisfying. Feels like the writer's trying to be clever by instilling empathy where you wouldn't expect it, but it's just dumb. The score is also very generic. It could fit in any fantasy movie and not really distinguish itself. It's certainly a far cry from the iconic Basil Polidorus songs in the Conan movies, that's for sure. I'd give this a 3 out of 10. This movie feels as troubled as its production. It lacks any real bite or pizzazz to make it a worthwhile B movie watch. In the grand scheme of Hyborian Age films, I'd place it below all of them. Below the 1985 version, the 2011 Conan version, because that one did have some visual style. Conan the Destroyer, which was at least dumb fun, and it doesn't even compare with Arnold's Conan the Barbarian. Bad CGI, bad dialogue, bad directing, and bad writing, with few outstanding moments and no spice. When a movie's memorable quote is, "You were a slave who allowed slavery." Well, need I say more?